The final item of business today is a members' business debate on motion number 3136 in the name of Liz Smith on Scotland's mountain rescue teams. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put. Would those members who wish to speak in the debate please press the request to speak buttons now. And if you are ready, Liz Smith, I would call on you to open the debate.
Deputy Presiding Officer, there was an article in the Sunday newspapers last weekend which ventured the opinion that once people reach the age of 40, their spirit of adventure declines. The article went on that by the time the people are out of their 40s altogether, they will opt for a much more sedate lifestyle, more of which will be based indoors rather than outdoors. And once people are over 50, it said, they become very risk-averse. Now, I will leave you to ponder which description best fits me, but in recent months it has been an enormous privilege for me to undertake some work with Tayside Mountain Rescue Team and to see at first hand the extraordinary commitment that they make, unpaid and often in very challenging circumstances, when they provide the support to members of the public when they find themselves in difficulties on the hills or at sea. Our 27 mountain rescue teams, which are assisted by 3 police forces and 2 RAF teams, are staffed by some of the finest professionals in Scotland, over 1,000 in all. Last year, 668 persons were assisted by our teams, and a total of 24,000 hours was required in deployment, 24/7, and in all 365 days. They give selflessly of their time to assist others, frequently in different mountain terrain or in dangerous waters, in treacherous weather conditions and often at night, and they do so at a time when the relatively small amount of public money they receive is under considerable pressure and when charitable giving is constrained by the effects of the recession. And when you consider that it is a minimum of £6,000 to scramble a helicopter these days, the annual grant of £339,000 to mountain rescue teams puts a perspective on that pressure. Fundraising is not an easy issue. The Mountain Rescue Service would be the first to admit that they are seen as a very specialist in the sense that their services are only relied on by a very small number of people, and therefore it's not easy for them to compete for public money alongside things like cancer charities or Barnardo's or RSPCA, which obviously have a much wider public appeal. True, there are some additional funds which can be provided to assist with some extra staff, some additional equipment, and also with the Mountain Weather Forecast website, which I have to say is usually first class in terms of accuracy. But we should be in no doubt about the pressure under which these mountain rescue teams find themselves when it comes to financing their activities. This also needs to be seen in the context of the very fast pace of technological change. For example, the newest GPS and avalanche detection monitors, now commonly used in the Alpine countries, and which I had the privilege to watch in operation, are extremely high-tech and expensive. I was told in some cases the costs have been rising by up to 40% in the last few years, so there is an obvious concern as to how to balance safety needs with the available finance. But the teams are also under pressure for a variety of other reasons. Firstly, a growing number of people are coming to Scotland to enjoy our magnificent mountains and rugged scenery, and whilst that is extremely good news for us and greatly to be welcomed from a tourist perspective, it also brings its challenges. Apart from the growing number of older walkers and climbers, statistics also clearly point to the growing increase in the numbers coming from out with Scotland, including from abroad, which makes it very difficult to ensure that the public, in its widest definition, is fully educated about the potential dangers. How often do we see tourists excited by the thought of scaling Ben Nevis or Cairngorm, heading out with inadequate clothing and kit? And it's easy to understand why, if they come from countries where a reliable summer climate means that there is little danger in the hills. Not so in Scotland, especially this year when we saw in the spring the extraordinary change round in weather patterns, which meant that we jumped from near Mediterranean temperatures to Arctic ones in the space of 48 hours, and the resulting implications this had for climbers and the equipment that they required. Even in mid-May this year, some of our hills, even in places like Glenafric and Glencannick, were unusually thick with snow and became places for crampons and ice axes when we would normally just expect ordinary walking kit. It is this public awareness issue which is a major concern for Scotland's mountain rescue teams. How best to educate a largely ill-informed public and how to ensure that our school children can grow up with some understanding of the responsibility which is required if they choose to venture onto the hills. On December the 10th, 2010, we saw the very high-profile media case of some climbers who ill-advisedly set out in Glendall against the very strong advice from weather forecasters and the Met Office and from mountain rescue teams, only to cause 42 volunteers and a helicopter and a full medical team to be involved in their rescue. They appeared to have little appreciation of just what was required in bringing them back to safety. Raising awareness costs money, and it also requires a considerable amount of time from the experts when they too are required to undertake such intense training. It is an issue which concerns them greatly, and which I think requires some imaginative thinking if we are to make our hills a safer place. There are also controversial debates about how much signage should be displayed without spoiling our countryside, whether there should be additional personal insurance. And I understand from some members of the mountain rescue teams who have been out recently in training exercises in Austria that we have many lessons to learn from some of the Alpine countries about how there can be much better coordination of the emergency services. Coordination which saves valuable time on a call-out and which can therefore save lives. And it is on this theme which I'd like to finish, given the impending changes to the public sector reform. New structures to police and fire services will have considerable implications for mountain rescue teams. There is already very close cooperation between Mountain Rescue Committee of Scotland and ACPOS, but the officers of both are wary of some of the implications of the new structure and what this will mean for the best delivery of local services. Yes, of course.
John Finney.
Would the member accept that in any case, in many instances, rescues are coordinated across force boundaries? So, for instance, in the Cairngorms, where on one side it's Northern Constabulary, the other side Grampian Police. So there is, and you also mentioned the RAF teams, there is a history of coordination across services and across forces.
Indeed there is, and I thank the member for that intervention. I think what I'm pointing to, that in terms of some of the advice of what mountain rescue teams themselves are reporting just now, there is better coordination in some other countries, and at a time of public sector reform that's something that we have to bear in mind. So I think, given the lessons that have been learnt, we need a very careful strategic planning to be involved in all our emergency services, and I know the Scottish Government is working very hard on that, because there is a very genuine desire to maintain and enhance the volunteer nature of mountain rescue teams, and that needs to be thought through in the context of public sector reform and the required financial services. Deputy Presiding Officer, in 2 weeks' time, after what has been a 30-year adventure for me, I hope to finish my last Munro. In that time, I have thankfully not been involved in any incident, something which can happen to any climber, however experienced and well equipped. But I have witnessed 3 mountain rescues, one particularly dangerous one on the Coolin Ridge when a climber had fallen some considerable length into a very inhospitable gully of Corrigrunda. The skill of the mountain rescue team and the helicopter pilot and the medics was second to none, and I am quite sure was the reason why a potential fatality was avoided. These men and women who give of their time so selflessly are one of Scotland's greatest assets. We must do everything we can to support them, and I move the motion in my name.
Many thanks. I now call on Jean Urquhart to be followed by Rhoda Grant. 4 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I particularly welcome the debate and congratulate Liz Smith on bringing it to the Chamber. I'm grateful for the opportunity to pay tribute to the crucial work undertaken by every mountain rescue team across Scotland, particularly with so many operational in my own region of the Highlands and Islands. And I have on occasion seen the team when they've come back from a successful search, because they are on occasion having to be called out. And I know the work that they put in and how exhausted they can be after a search, but success is theirs, and I've seen that too. As anybody who has climbed a Corbett or scaled a Munro knows, the beauty of our natural landscape, as viewed from atop one of our peaks, is truly breathtaking. For helping those who have fallen foul of the elements in this pursuit, our Mountain Rescue Team volunteers deserve our thanks. In 2010, the Scottish Mountain Rescue Team volunteers went out over 500 times, frequently contending not only with rugged terrain but also under poor weather conditions or during the dark. In total, volunteers were deployed for 26,000 hours in 2010, a figure made all the more impressive by the year-round commitment to their voluntary role. The Lochaber Mountain Rescue Team in my own region attended 72 of these incidents, occasionally in conjunction with other teams, and displaying a blend of professionalism and commitment to community service that is an example to all of us. It must be remembered that we have a part to play in ensuring the continuation of this vital and voluntary service. The Scottish Government has given £339,000 in total to the Mountain Rescue Committee of Scotland for the year 2011-12, increasing the general stream by funding of £12,000 and providing a one-off £12,000 grant towards communications equipment. This level of funding was welcomed on BBC Radio Scotland on Saturday morning by Jonathan Hart, the chair of the Mountain Rescue Committee of Scotland, who hailed this support and the tremendous opportunities afforded to mountain rescue teams by the move to a single Scottish police force while maintaining strong local connections. And I was really particularly pleased to hear his comments about that, that in fact they do see it as working more effectively, not less so. However, responsibility for mountain safety must also be shared by the public at large. The Mountain Rescue Committee of Scotland's 210 report points out that summer hill walkers are responsible for more incidents than any other mountain activity. So while we might think that this is those of us who are not into winter climbing or rock climbing, that it must only be something that affects those who are, in fact, the majority of workers, people who often just set out for a walk. Sometimes, and I've seen them myself with high-heeled shoes, and that 1/3 of all accidents result from a slip or a trip. Although it would be impossible to permanently eliminate human error and abnormal weather conditions, we can mitigate the number of accidents by continuing to educate ourselves about how best to prepare and then take care of ourselves while enjoying Scotland's hills and mountains. It's my hope that with continuing support from the government and the public and well-earned publicising of their work, that we can help our mountain rescue teams go from strength to strength. Presiding Officer, I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now call on Rhoda Grant to be followed by Dave Thompson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I firstly congratulate Liz Smith in procuring this debate, and it's certainly I'm pleased to be able to pay tribute to the work of the very many volunteers that make up the Mountain Rescue Service, and indeed their hard work and the efforts they go to rescue people on the hills. And when I've spoken to our volunteers in the Mountain Rescue Service, I've learnt that many of them do this because they either work in the hills themselves, or indeed they love the hills and love leisure pursuits in the hills. So they do this to allow other people to gain the pleasure from those areas that they do themselves. So they do it happily and do it in support of others. And I think that's something that is to be commended. Other speakers have talked about equipment given by the Scottish Government, and I think that's right, that they should be equipped as well as possible. We need to make sure that some of the people who are volunteers maybe don't have any kind of private wealth, so we need to make sure that they are well covered with safety equipment, that they have good communications, because it's really difficult to find people who are lost on the hills. Some of them maybe haven't left very good instructions as to where they've been, but obviously if an accident happens and someone falls, it's very difficult to pinpoint where they are. So we need to have good communication skills. And I was lucky enough to be out with the RAF search and rescue, and this was supposedly a training exercise, but we were called out to a real-life rescue. And as we got close to the spot where the Mountain Rescue had pinpointed that the people may be found, we all had to take a window and start looking out for them, because it was impossible to pinpoint that. And indeed, it was just everybody in the helicopter looking out that meant that we eventually found them and that they were rescued and made a full recovery. We also need the mountain rescue, because a lot of people who come to Scotland come because they want to climb our hills and take part in our outdoor activity. And Fort William is recognised as the outdoor capital of the UK, and some of the best mountains and climbing are there. Many people like Liz Smith herself are involved in Munro bagging. It brings an awful lot of people to Scotland and makes a huge contribution to our economy, because we've moved away from people just coming to stay in a place. They want to come and see and do. And the mountain rescue teams actually makes that possible and boost our local economies, because they're there making that safer. Other touched on insurance, and certainly with my discussions with rescue teams, they're not very keen on that because they see that as a barrier to people making use of the hills and enjoying that leisure pursuit. We all know that there are a minority of people that take risks and go out in the hills ill-prepared, without the knowledge. So we have to do more to make sure that they are educated on the dangers of being in the hills, and that there is good public information available, maybe for tourists and the like, who don't do this on a normal day-to-day basis. But I really wouldn't like us to move to the point where, to use the hills, you would need to be insured. And also those people who go unprepared and unknowingly wouldn't know to take out insurance, so it would only deter those who were actually being responsible and safe. So, Presiding Officer, just to sum up, I really want to pay tribute to the volunteers that carry out this service. They are providing a service for the rest of the country as well as those who use the hills, and I'm very grateful for their work and wish them well.
Many thanks. And now calling Dave Thompson, to be followed by Nanette Milne.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and congratulations as well to Liz Smith for securing this debate. As a hill walker myself who managed to get up Ben Nevis last September, I certainly appreciate the Mountain Rescue Service, although they didn't have to come out for me on that particular day, thank goodness. Approximately 80% of mountain rescues in Scotland take place in the areas which are either in or overlap my constituency of Skye, Lochaber and Badenoch, with 8 mountain rescue teams covering the constituency, including the Glencoe, Ben Nevis, Cairngorms and those on the Isle of Skye. In 2009, the number of incidents within the Northern Constabulary area, the heart of which is my constituency, was an incredible 251. The second highest was 72 incidents in central Scotland. I quote these statistics to make the point that of 27 mountain rescue teams affiliated to the Mountain Rescue Committee of Scotland, the busiest are in my constituency, and since the new year, the Lochaber and Glencoe mountain rescue teams have had 75 call-outs. The Highlands of Scotland have long been praised for the beauty of our majestic mountains and the glorious glens that stretch out before walkers, and mountain rescue is of vital importance to visitors and residents alike. The Cairngorm team has 43 unpaid volunteers, and the website states, all decisions are taken in the best interests of the casualty, without the thought of recompense or of the cost of the operation. But it is a costly service for mountain rescue volunteers. In 2009, the Lochaber Mountain Rescue Team devoted 2,122 hours to attend incidents. Each rescue team is modelled differently, and in the Highlands the teams have adopted a northern model, which means they operate on behalf of the police without police involvement and deliver best value to the public purse. I would commend this model to the Government as we move forward. As a local service, team members know the weather, the contours of the hill and the colloquial Gaelic names, and it is important that the service remains local after the creation of a single police force. It is because of the dedication and sacrifice of mountain rescue teams that I warmly welcome the Scottish Government's much-needed announcement last December to increase the annual grant funding to the Mountain Rescue Committee of Scotland. The money is being spent on equipment and a project manager, as well as being distributed between the mountain rescue teams to be spent as they see fit. But mountain rescue volunteers still have a lot to do a lot of fundraising. The Cairngorm team reckons that more than half of their 100,000 annual running costs is raised by themselves each year, and although the Mountain Rescue Committee of Scotland is adamant that mountain rescue is only sustainable if it is voluntary, members of the rescue teams find it difficult to give the time for fundraising. In Lochaber, the rescue team have been calling for more than just financial support. They also want a helicopter based in Lochaber. As it is, a rescue helicopter can take up to an hour and a half to reach the busiest mountain rescue locations in Scotland, as it travels from Prestwick, Lossiemouth, Stornoway or Shetland to Lochaber. A helicopter in the area would serve the needs of mountain rescue teams much better and would save lives. Last year, the Lochaber Mountain Rescue Team called for the assistance of a helicopter more than 50 times, so there is a definite need, And as John Stevenson, leader of the Lochaber Mountain Rescue Team for 4 years, said, having a helicopter would mean you're taking minutes rather than an hour, and time in any rescue is absolutely crucial. I support them in their aim and hope that the Minister can give some support on this important matter. Thank you.
Many thanks. I now call on Annette Milne to be followed by Aileen MacLeod.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. In congratulating Liz Smith on bringing this debate to Parliament, I'd also like to commend her own very significant climbing achievements, both in Scotland and abroad, and to wish her every success when she tackles her final Munro at the end of the month. Liz Smith has raised some very important issues in her opening speech, and the two that I would stress are the importance of maintaining and enhancing the voluntary nature of mountain rescue teams, whilst recognising the need for strategic planning involving all sectors of the emergency services as they face up to public sector reform, and the need to ensure that people venturing into Scotland's hills and mountains know the importance of being properly equipped and prepared for the conditions they may meet in our rapidly changing weather patterns. The Braemar Mountain Rescue Team is the one that I know best, and I want to pay tribute to its members. It was formed in 1965, continuing a long tradition of local people giving aid and working closely with the local mountain rescue teams, a tradition which persists today. Over the years, it has involved many unsung heroes, local men and women who, for the love of the hills and concern for their fellow human beings, venture out into our hills and mountains in all weathers and conditions, most of their activities going unnoticed and seldom talked about by the team members themselves. Currently, there are 39 members in the team, and already since the beginning of last September, they've completed 32 rescues, from missing skiers to fallen walkers. In addition to their rescue work, they now do an annual programme of lectures and visits to raise public awareness, and they provide emergency telephones at Derry Lodge and at the Spittal of Glenshee, helping to maintain mountain safety and rescue across the northeast of Scotland. Mountain rescue teams are, as ever, heavily reliant on voluntary fundraising to maintain their essential and expensive equipment, and there are undoubtedly significant challenges for them at the present time. But their very essence is their voluntary nature, and public sector reform, especially the creation of a single police force, must take this into account and support this volunteer base, helping it to develop alongside appropriate public sector financial support. I once coordinated a group of young Conservatives on a sponsored climb of Loch Nagar in aid of Braemar Mountain Rescue. Team members came with us, leading our younger members up the more challenging routes, while the rest of us, like me, went up the standard path to the top. We had a great day. The young guys learned a lot, and we handed well over £800 to the team, at that time a significant sum, which was greatly appreciated by them. Many groups regularly undertake similar fundraising activities for charity, and I'd encourage more of them to donate at least some of their proceeds to the mountain rescue teams, which will put them to excellent use. I'll finish, if I may, with an anecdote of an encounter some years ago, which left an indelible impression on my memory. On our way back to the Linn of Dee, after climbing Ben Macdui with my family on a fairly dismal summer day and encountering some unpleasant misty conditions at the top, where we had to rely on my husband's skills with a compass to ensure that we got down again safely, we met a family of 3, a grandfather with his son and grandson, heading where we had just come from, but convinced they were going towards Braemar. We managed to persuade them to turn round and come with us, and we saw them safely back to Braemar. They were already tired when we met them. They had little food left, having spent the previous night in the Carrower Bothy because of bad weather, and they had no transport from the Linn of Dee to Braemar. They were new to hill walking, and whilst they had made the right decision to go home in view of the inclement weather, their inability to map read had resulted in their going in completely the wrong direction. I'm in no doubt that if we hadn't happened to meet them, they would have become completely lost or worse, and another mountain rescue statistic. The experience was a salutary lesson for that family and for my own children on the importance of map reading and other directional skills when venturing out into our mountains, even in summer. Presiding Officer, Liz Smith has secured a very important debate this evening, and I do look forward to hearing the Minister's response to the concerns she's raised. Thank you.
Many thanks. I now call on Aileen MacLeod to be followed by Jamie McGregor.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and can I also add my congratulations to Liz Smith on securing the debate this evening. it is wholly appropriate that we take this opportunity to congratulate our mountain rescue teams and volunteers across Scotland for the courageous and tireless commitment they give to saving the lives of others and more generally of ensuring that the outdoors are safer for us all to enjoy. Now, there is an understandable tendency to associate Scotland's mountain rescue activities with locations north of the Central Belt, but of course mountain rescue teams also exist across the south of Scotland, and I want to take this opportunity to pay tribute to the Moffat and Galloway mountain rescue teams, which cover hundreds of square miles of the south of Scotland and which often join forces to support one another in emergency situations. Presiding Officer, Galloway alone is home to over 40 summits in excess of 2,000 feet, referred to as Donalds, where the highest peak in southern Scotland is the Merrick at 2,766 feet, and is also home to countless miles of hills and forest footpaths and cycle trails, whether it be the Cairnsmore Fleet or along the cradle of Scotland's independence, as it's known, which starts and ends at Bruce's Stone overlooking Loch Truel, or along the Rins of Kells. Now, since 1976, when it was formed, the Galloway Mountain Rescue Team has responded to over 400 incidents in all weather conditions, day and night, and covering a wide range of emergency situations. Very happily, the vast majority of these incidents are resolved successfully. Now, one of the extraordinary aspects of our mountain rescue teams, and one I know is greatly cherished by those of us who enjoy outdoor pursuits, is that they very seldom, if ever, publicly criticise individuals who found themselves in difficulty. And this is the case even in those cases where some criticism might be justified, and that is why I'm particularly pleased that Liz Smith's motion calls upon those of us who do enjoy outdoor pursuits to be properly equipped when we take to the hills, have a basic understanding of map reading, as well as the conditions we are likely to encounter, and ensure that someone knows where we are going and when we are due to return. If we take no responsibility in those ways, we will not only reduce the chances that when we need rescued, we will also greatly increase the chances of our own survival and the survival of others should we find ourselves in difficulty. And for those seeking to visit the wonderful outdoor pursuits that Galloway has to offer, I urge them to visit the Hill Safety page of the Galloway Mountain Rescue website before setting out. And while they're on that website, I'd also urge them to visit the fundraising pages, when funding is obviously an issue that is of constant concern to the teams of volunteers working tirelessly and selflessly in difficult conditions to ensure the safety of the public. And when the Scottish Government increased its funding for mountain rescue teams last December, the Deputy Chief Constable Andy Cowie, the mountain rescue lead for the Association of Chief Police Officers Scotland, said there is no doubt that without the bravery and commitment of these volunteers, the police in Scotland would find it very difficult, if not impossible, to fill the gap that could be created. It was also welcomed by the Galloway Mountain Rescue Chairman Derek Hamilton, who said that extra funding will assist the work being done to refit their new mobile control facility vehicle. But it's not only the Government who support the activities of our mountain rescue activities. As elsewhere, the Galloway Mountain Rescue Team enjoy considerable support from a range of local and national companies that generally assist with the provision of essential clothing, communications and transport, and of course the support of local communities and the general public is important. Presiding Officer, it genuinely is a privilege to pay tribute to our mountain rescue teams across the country here today. They are staffed by dedicated and courageous men and women of all ages and from every walk of life who give their time and skills so that we, the general public, can enjoy our outdoor pursuits in comparative safety. So in conclusion, Presiding Officer, I'd like to add my sincere gratitude to the scores of volunteers who give their time to local mountain rescue teams. They are an inspirational group of people who deserve more than just our thanks, and I'm looking forward to spending at least part of my summer out and about in the Galloway Hills, and to do so safely. I support the motion.
Many thanks. I now call on Jamie McGregor, after which we'll move to the Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. As a Highlands and Islands MSP, I would like to congratulate Liz Smith on bringing this debate on a very important subject to this chamber, and also like to congratulate Liz Smith for being on the verge of completing the ascent of all the Munros in Scotland. That is no mean feat, to say the least. I would also like to pay tribute to all the mountain rescue services in Scotland for the lives they save, and thank them for the personal risks they take in order to do so. Like the RNLI, these men and women are heroes and members of the finest of clubs with the highest of principles. I would particularly like to commend my local Oban Mountain Rescue Team, so often on Ben Cruachan, and also the Glencoe Mountain Rescue Service, who do so much, And I cannot leave this chamber without mentioning Hamish McInnes of Glencoe, a man revered in mountaineering circles, who with his colleagues has brought help and succour to so many in distress. I would also commend his writings on mountaineering to those who have not been lucky enough to read them. If ever a service could be said to be an outstanding example of the best of the big society, then it is the Mountain Rescue Services of Scotland. They have earned the gratitude of so many. Long may they continue to do so.
Many thanks. I now call on Minister Rosanna Cunningham to close the debate.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And as you can see, I'm going to try and do this with my iPad, which will be the first time I've tried this in the chamber. So there may be one or two hiccups, for which I apologise in advance. But can I congratulate Liz Smith in obtaining this debate? I'm sure everybody in the chamber will be agreeing with her in respect of her sentiments. And while I don't profess to be a Munro bagger, I have from time to time been able to wave to Liz while we've both been out separately walking. Can I congratulate her on her personal achievement that's about to be, and I'm sure she's enjoyed every single minute of it. The civilian mountain rescue teams in Scotland are a powerful example of the culture of voluntary service of which Scotland can be proud. And I ought to mention here that both my colleagues Michael Matheson and Fergus Ewing have been actively involved in mountain rescue teams in the past. So even within government we know how important they are. They were deployed 573 times in 2011, committed over 23,000 hours throughout Scotland to search for and rescue those in need of assistance. And that's a remarkable achievement by a service staffed entirely by volunteers. They are an absolutely vital service to those who use Scotland's hills and mountains. And many of them do get involved in building community resilience in lowland areas. We've accustomed to thinking about them in terms of only the high hills, but of course they will be key in lowland areas as well. And we only have to look back to the severe winter of 2010, when Scotland experienced the worst winter weather since 1965, to discover mountain rescue teams transferring patients to hospital where road ambulances couldn't function, transporting doctors and other essential workers to and from work. Their efforts supported the NHS and kept vital services going. So there's absolutely no doubt that they provide excellent support to emergency services and to Scottish communities, as well as just simply saving lives in our mountains, our hills and remote areas. So the Scottish Government supports the Scottish Mountain Rescue financially and does have an excellent and productive ongoing working relationship with the Mountain Rescue Committee of Scotland. And it's a partnership of which we're very proud. Last December, the Cabinet Secretary for Justice announced at Ochil's Mountain Rescue Centre that the Scottish Government would increase its annual grant funding by 4% from £300,000 to £312,000. Scotland is the only part of the UK that provides an annual government grant to voluntary mountain rescue teams. So let's at least give ourselves that pat on the back. Members may be aware that the new facilities in Ochil were built with financial support also from St John Ambulance in Scotland. So I need to mention their contribution as well. They provided significant funding towards mountain rescue bases and transport in Scotland since the late 1990s. And I'd like to commend their continuing support for the mountain rescue teams. The Government's also provided a further £12,000 towards communications equipment at that time and is providing a further £50,000 partnership funding over 2 years, last year and this year, towards a project manager's post. So overall, funding in 2012-13 will total £322,000, which will help to continue the delivery of a first-class frontline voluntary service free at the point of delivery. And I want to say something just now about education. The motion does highlight the need for public education. And I think we would all agree on that. The Scottish Government also provides funding of around £155,000 a year through Sport Scotland to the Mountaineering Council of Scotland to promote public education on mountain safety issues. And as you can see, there's a number of different organisations involved in this particular network. The funding supports a mountain safety advisor to provide education to the public, including skills courses, free winter safety lectures, and online training resources which target the common causes of mountaineering incidents, such as poor navigation, bad planning and the effects of winter conditions. The MCS also provides a range of services such as mountain training and the Mountain Weather Information Service, and a further £137,000 goes to the Avalanche Information Centre at Glenmore Lodge, which is also key in part of that information gathering. And I want to pick up just on a couple of points raised by Liz Smith, because as I understand it, she made reference to the cost of calling out a helicopter at £6,000. And that may very well be the true cost of each call-out, but of course it's not a charge as such on the Mountain Rescue Services or on the Government or anybody else, because it's borne by the MOD and treated as a training exercise. If I'm right in thinking, still, Prince William is, of course, a pilot in exactly this scenario. She also mentioned the issue of personal insurance, which is superficially attractive, but I think I'm right in saying, along with Rhoda Grant, that it's not something that would be universally welcomed by the mountain rescue teams themselves. Apart from the point made very forcibly by Rhoda Grant about it putting barriers in place, there is a fear that it would result in professionalising something that is currently voluntary. In Switzerland, the mountain rescue workers are full-time and paid, and of course that's through insurance. Yes, briefly.
Thank you very much to the Minister for taking intervention. One of the issues that's been raised with me is harmonisation of insurance for the mountain rescue teams themselves as we move on. I wonder if she would look at that and bring it up to the best standards, which are the standards in the northern area.
Minister? I'm happy to look at anything that would help the situation, and if the member wants to write to me, I can see what we can ascertain for him. Again, there's been mention about moving to single services next year. When we do that, land-based search and rescue will continue to be a police responsibility and will actually give us an opportunity to further improve coordination, which in circumstances has already got to be worked out across different services. The Mountain Rescue Committee of Scotland can be assured that officials are engaging with police and fire representatives and other organisations about future resilience arrangements. Now, I do want to mention very quickly the Tayside Mountain Rescue Team for obvious reasons. The motion recognises how well they're linked in with the existing resilience structures. It's very important that they've assisted in the development of a strategic coordinating group's rescue plan, and that plan is looked upon as a good example by other parts of Scotland due to the effective joined-up multi-agency approach to incidents. Overnight visits to Scotland, as mentioned by Liz Smith, have increased. I can't be the only one in this chamber who hears the latest radio reports of someone in difficulty waiting, and you're waiting with a sinking feeling to hear that there are individuals who've come from outside Scotland, having started off their walk or climb on a beautiful day, only to discover that very soon they're in a different climate altogether, not understanding what our climate is like. And that was a point very well made by Elizabeth Smith in her speech. So I have no doubt whatsoever that with continued support and assistance from the Scottish Government and others, that the voluntary mountain rescue teams are going to rise to that increasing challenge. They do represent the very best traditions of community voluntary service, and I'm sure that this chamber will join me in sincerely thanking them for their admirable courage and dedication in assisting all who need them, wherever and whenever they are called upon.
Many thanks. I now close this meeting of Parliament.